สวัสดีครับ大家好 Between Chinese and Thai 中文跟泰语哪个语言是比较难学ระหว่างภาษาไทยกับภาษาจีนเรียนภาษาไหนยากกว่ากัน Which language is harder to learn? This is a question that many people have asked for many reasons. Some people are trying to contemplate, am I going to learn Thai? Am I going to learn Chinese? You want to learn one language, both of them are tonal. Which one will it be? Some people who may have learned one of them, or you're a speaker of one of them, want to think that the language I learnt was more difficult. So it's going to be interesting. Which one really is more difficult? I'm fluent in both Mandarin and Thai. I work professionally in both Mandarin and Thai as a facilitator, as simultaneous interpreter, and I have done so for many, many years. So I think that I can speak for both Chinese and Thai. Which language is going to be harder to learn? Which one you're going to be able to get up and running faster? And most importantly, so make sure you stay to the end, which language actually gives you more bang for the buck? Okay, so first things first, Chinese. Why don't I just say Mandarin? It's a political statement for some, just saying Chinese rather than Mandarin. But for me, when I say Chinese, I mean Chinese. Even though you might be starting off in Mandarin as the standard Chinese language that you're learning for the country of China, as you go down the rabbit hole, you will find that Chinese is actually this beast. And Mandarin is just this surface. It's what's spoken. It's one language, but you cannot help but get deeper and deeper. And so as you get further into, say, the old classical Chinese, which is part of the spoken Chinese, or into other dialects, you'll realize that actually Chinese goes much deeper. And so when I'm speaking about Chinese, I speak Chinese, I learned Chinese. That means that I understand Chinese outside of Mandarin, the old, the middle Chinese, and into other dialects. And it's just something that happens as you speak more and more Chinese. Now, Thai, you could probably even say the same thing as well. You have standard central Thai that maybe they'll teach you in the schools, but actually the Thai that people speak on the street, and then the Thai, depending on where you're coming from in Thailand, these are different TAI Thai languages. And in fact, to learn Thai, just like Chinese, well then the TAI languages will cover you all the way from southern China down to southern Thailand, even including parts into Vietnam, right through Laos. So once you start off in one of these language legs, you are not going to regret it. And it's going to take you on a lifetime journey of fascination, and you just won't want it to end. It's exciting every day and you never stop learning. So let's have a look. Which language is going to be more difficult to learn? I've broken this down into a few things. The first thing is speaking. So it all depends. How far do you want to go with your language learning? Do you want to learn it to just be able to speak to a taxi driver and tell them to turn left, turn right? Do you want to learn it enough so you can go shopping and maybe, order something at a restaurant? Or do you want to use it in daily life and speak to people about the things that matter to them? For me, when I talk about learning a language, I mean learning the language to the point that I can actually speak to the heart with the people. We can speak on politics, we can speak on current affairs, we can speak on philosophy, on religion. And so for me to get to that level, it's going to take some time, but this is where my investment in time is heading. I don't just want to be able to speak to a taxi driver. If I wanted to do that, I'd just go and get a Lonely Planet guide. So let's have a look at Chinese. Chinese, you have 汉语拼音. This is the phonetic spelling system using Roman letters that you're going to use to pronounce Mandarin Chinese words. Now, the beautiful thing about 汉语拼音 is that one letter, one combination of letters matches one sound. So if you get the letters QU, CHU, XU, SHU, NU with the little dots on it, NU, these will never change. And so it's wonderful. If you learn the 汉语拼音, as long as you drill your from the beginning, you are putting yourself in a very good place to speak very clear Chinese from day one. It's fantastic. Compare that to Thai. Now, there are no standard Romanized transliteration systems for Thai. There are many in use out there. Some call them karaoke systems. Probably the most common one is the Paibun system by Kun Bentawan. And, it's okay. I personally prefer IPA because it can be accurate and However, if people are learning these systems, and say they're even learning the Paibun system, they are basically learning an entire phonetic system, which later on they're going to have to learn an entire phonetic system again, which is the Thai writing system. So what I would say is, rather than put you in a place where if you see a P2, say it's just a normal P, PA, people are going to be pronouncing it pa rather than ba. Or if you're using the Pai Bun system BPA, maybe you'll pronounce it ba. The influence of your mother tongue is just too strong when you're looking at these Roman letters. This is why with Thai, I say skip the whole phase of learning the Romanization and just jump straight into the letters of Thai, because you're going to save yourself a world of grief. Now, there is a difference then. So in Mandarin, you can be up and running with your Hanyu Pinyin in a day. 3 days, you'll be pretty good at it. Within 5 days, you'll have the sound system mastered. And there's a reason I say 5 days. You should be drilling yourself for about 3 to 5 days with your pinyin before moving anywhere, because you want those sounds to be in your system before you go out actually really speaking. It might be boring, but you're going to be doing yourself a favor, because you won't have to unlearn bad mistakes in the future. With Thai, it's probably going to take you 3 to 5 days to learn the writing system. This is why I put Cracking Thai Fundamentals together. I wanted to get people jumping straight into the writing system, and I've based it on the map of the human mouth, which is what the Thai system is based on this Indic map of the mouth that all Indic languages are, in Tibetan and Balinese, and all of these languages are based on this same map of the human mouth. If you notice in Thai, we have Go, Kho, 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 Ngo, Jo, Cho, 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 Nyo, Do, To, 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 No, Bo, Po, 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 Mo. In Chinese, when you learn your pinyin, it's just the other way around. So, Bo, Po, Mo, Fo, De, Te, Ne, Le, Ji, Qi, Xi, Ge, He, He. It's just around the other way, but it's the same map of the human mouth. So I would say learn Thai through the writing system. Do not go through all of that hassle of learning a Romanized script only to have to learn the Thai script anyway. The other thing with learning the Thai script from the start is that you get all of the tone system, everything built in, not just for standard Thai, but every single TAI Thai language is going to use this same structure to base where the tones are. So don't go counting tones. I see a lot of these bullshit statistics when people are talking about how difficult something is. There are 46 consonants and all of these tones. Stop counting tones. Stop counting consonants in the alphabet. Do you count how many keys there are on your keyboard, on your computer, and say, oh, I've got a 180 key keyboard? That means absolutely nothing. It's all about the sounds and the system. And the fact is that every tonal language in this part of the world, whether it's a Chinese language, a Vietnamese language, or a Thai language, actually run on this system. So learn the Thai script first if you're learning Thai. Now, in saying that, there may be a longer runway then for you to get up and running in the actual pronunciation in Thai. So when I said for Chinese, probably 1 to 3 days to get your pinyin, and then 5 days to really get that into your system. It's probably going to take you about 5 days to really get the Thai letters and the sounds into you, but to start to get that recognition, it might take a little longer. There is an upside, however. If you get that script in, this is where the rub is with Chinese. You are never ever going to have a native Chinese speaker write to you in Hanyu Pinyin. They will always write in Chinese. Now, while there are some parsers that may be able to convert Chinese characters into the Romanized Pinyin, it's not realistic, especially if you're chatting. You're just going to be wanting to speak in characters. And as you type in, characters will come up, but you need to know which character is which, at least be able to recognize them. To recognize Chinese characters is going to take some time. So you might be able to speak and get a whole bunch of sentences, but to know actually which characters go with them, which you're going to need to know at least for recognition when you're typing, that could take you much longer. So you're probably going to be up and running with your speaking faster in Mandarin, but to actually build your vocab up and have you functional with other human beings in the language is going to take longer to get to the same level, where if you were using Thai, you were reading, writing Thai, interacting on social media. Once you've learnt the alphabet, you know how to spell. There are pretty consistent spelling to pronunciation rules So you'll be pronouncing everything correctly. You can do that after a week, 2 weeks. You're going to be good to go for building up vocabulary from week 2, week 3. And the sky's the limit. The more you read, the more you interact, the more that you text your friends, the more vocab you're going to be. So in the very short term, Chinese, you'll be up and running faster. In the short to medium term, Thai, you will get a much more rich and powerful vocabulary. In Cracking Thai Fundamentals, I actually built 11 meaning building blocks. And so these are mainly Thai words. If you speak Chinese, you recognize them as well because they also exist in Chinese. But you can actually take these 11 meaning building blocks and start to build your own meanings. Now, the other cool thing about Thai is that about 60 to 70% is based on Sanskrit, or through Pali, which is an Indian vernacular that many of the Buddhist texts are written in. But either way, it links into Sanskrit, which is an Indo-European language, which is hooked into Latin, Greek, and the languages that we know. So once you learn the mask of the Thai sound system through the alphabet and how things are pronounced and maybe how things are masked through what the mouth is doing, you will actually see words that you're familiar with from Sanskrit roots, through Latin and Greek roots that you know even in English. And so to then start to build up some affixes, prefixes, and start to recognize meanings of words, even if you've never seen them before, that is going to really rapidly build your vocabulary up. So you've got these meaning building blocks for Thai words, and then you have Pali Sanskrit words. Then you have a whole bunch of other words. If I want to say computer in Thai, computer, you just Thaiify it. You say it in Tinglish. Chinese, you're not allowed to do that. There is an active policy when new words enter into Chinese, especially from China, they must be new words. So they're translated into Chinese characters that have a meaning specifically in Chinese. So computer, you can't say computer and it means computer. You have to say 电脑, electric brain. And so each component then has been put together to mean its own new meaning within Chinese. So the word computer, 电脑, telephone, 电话, electric voice, electric brain computer, 电脑, electric voice, 电话, telephone. If you speak Japanese, you would know the same word, 電話. Chinese, you are actually going to have to learn much more vocabulary in native Chinese terms. When I work as an interpreter, I will often have to sit for hours and hours learning all this new vocab for different domains that I'll be interpreting in, because those words just don't resemble anything like they are in English. In Chinese, don't try and make your own meanings up because you will get into a lot of trouble there. You see that often when people get tattoos and they want to be creative and make their own words up, or they'll do a Google Translate and they'll come up with some atrocious translation in Chinese that they then get tattooed into their body. So you don't want to guess meanings in Chinese, but you can guess them in Thai. So that's one big difference. So pronunciation, Mandarin is probably going to be faster to get going. Thai is a little harder. Thai also has a lot of glottal work. So ma, your glottis is doing everything. The timing between your glottis and when your tongue hits the points of your mouth. You've got mak, short and long, dead syllables, or we call them entering tone. Mandarin doesn't have these anymore. In Cantonese, you have them. And so for the sounds of Thai, they may be a little bit more difficult. Sounds like sounds like an initial NG. So ngō ngu. Even though we have NG in English, it doesn't occur at the beginning of words. So you're going to have to learn these. Mandarin speakers also have difficulty in doing that initial NG, by the way, when learning Thai. Cantonese speakers, not so much. And so then we're left with grammar. Which one is more difficult? They're actually pretty much on par. Chinese versus Thai versus English are all generally subject verb objects. So I eat rice. To eat rice just means to eat in both Thai and Chinese. So I eat rice. 我吃饭. 我 I 吃 eat 饭 rice. ผม I กิน eat ข้าว rice. So 我吃饭ผมกินข้าว I eat rice. It's the same subject verb object. However, there are some differences. In Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, you will generally put the modifier in the same place as English. So if I say the red car, 红车, 红 means red, 车 means car, 红车, red car. In Thai, if I wanted to say the red car, I would say Lot dang, lot car, roda in Sanskrit. Roda, if you speak Indonesian, that means wheel. So lot dang, dang is red. So lot dang, car red, hong che, red car. So the Chinese position of these words are actually closer to English. So maybe that's going to be easier for you. We also have classifiers in both languages. So for cars, you would say 一辆车 one car รถ1คัน one can of car so รถ1คัน一辆车 one 辆 of car and so these classifier words are going to be a challenge to any learner in both Thai and Chinese and there are just about as many classifiers in Chinese as in Thai and you'll have to learn them. The cool thing about it is once you get the classifiers they just become second nature and you can actually then go ahead and learn many other languages like Vietnamese. By the way, if you do get Chinese and Thai, then Vietnamese is going to be a piece of cake because Vietnamese grammar is pretty much like Thai. So if I say si dang, si means color, dang red, mao da color red in Vietnamese, whereas in Chinese, hong, se, hong, red, se, color. So Vietnamese is like Thai word placement with many Sinitic or Chinese derived words. So learning Vietnamese, once you've learned Chinese, is going to be easy from the vocabulary point of view. It's going to be easy if you've learned Thai from the grammar point of view. If you learn both, piece of cake. I hope this has been useful in gauging which language is more difficult. Honestly, I think that both languages have their pros and cons, and Chinese, you're definitely going to be up and speaking much faster. However, that's going to plateau and then the real grind in learning characters and building vocab up could take months to years. Whereas in Thai, once you've learned the alphabet, it's up to you how much you read and you can just keep building up your vocab, building up. Every piece of media you read then, you can build it up and you'll know many of the terms that you're learning so you can be up and running professionally in the language much faster. Which language gives you more bang for the buck? Chinese, hands down. I use Chinese in business all over the world, not just in China, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, but I use it everywhere. You go to New York, there are business people from China. You go to Europe, there are business people from China. Chinese is also spoken as a second language by many, many people around the world. And so you can use this as a lingua franca when going to other places when they may not speak English. So Chinese definitely gives you more bang for the buck. And as you get further deeper down into Middle Chinese and Old Chinese, so 中国汉语, 上古汉语, then it sets you up for Vietnamese, for knowing many of the meanings from Korean and Japanese. So Chinese is this wealth of knowledge. Thai, yeah, if you've got family members or you're in Thailand or you're doing business in Thailand, for sure. However, there is limited use and limited commercial value to it. Definitely Chinese on the commercial side. All of the languages, though, they're just fascinating and you will never regret going down either or both of the paths. So if you're into Thai, get my Cracking Thai Fundamentals book and also take the program. Even more so, come in and join our discussion on our Discord server. Our Thai group is super active. They're awesome. We've got almost over 500 people now. So scan the QR code up top. Come in and join the discussion. Get your copy of Cracking Thai Fundamentals here. You can check down in the link as well. If in Thailand, I'll send it to you. And also the online program. For Chinese, I'd love to put one together, but you also can come into our Discord server and we have a Chinese group there, many native speakers of Chinese as well, and continue the dialogue. I want us to learn together in a spirit of learning, and no matter what level you're at, we can continue the conversation together. I'm Stuart J. Raj. I'll see you on the other side.